Like it got to that level because Oprah became such an authority, and we were representative of that it, like, on a daily basis, the stakes were very high. We did the first webcast with Eckhart Tolle and his book, A New Earth, in 2008. And we had 600,000 people at the time coming in at the same time. And at that point, the internet, no one had done that before. There was not even a live sports event that had tried that. And we were the first to do it, and we crashed. How do you handle those situations? And so you really have to learn to get deep with yourself and have a tough skin. And then figure out, in the long run, I didn't even understand that I was actually bottling a lot of that up. Like it came to a point where I had to be able to figure out letting that out, because I was living in that kind of fight or flight all the time.
Robyn Brecker, welcome to Fear Unzipped. It is such a treat to have you here again. Thank you, Beth Grossman, for introducing us. I should just have that supered up on my screen because
I am with you.
What a great person. Robyn, I'm so happy that we connected because we have some synergistic things, that are very much in common. I want to let the peeps know about you. You are the co-founder of Seeking Center. People can see that in your background. It's a modern wellness and spiritual platform designed to guide you back to yourself. It's really needed right now. And that'll be in our show notes. People will be able to tap into all that beautiful, juicy information that you have there. It's really, really nurturing. You're a former Oprah executive and an Emmy Award-winning producer. You spent more than 20 years creating meaningful, impactful programming alongside some of the world's leading thought leaders, reaching and inspiring millions along the way. We have to tap into that because I too worked with some thought leaders in Hollywood, and I'm sure we can compare notes a bit. You have a Seeking Center podcast, a private community, and a growing network of curated shows and content. So excited to learn more about that. You help seekers cut through the noise. This is so important. Discover practices, products, and experiences that can be truly life-changing. There's so much noise out there right now, Robyn, because everybody and their mother is an intuitive, psychic, medium, tarot reader.
Yes, that's true.
Many are very good, but many, you have to really read the energies because some are taking advantage of this new wave that's come in. And actually, you say, think of it as your go-to space, explore, grow, and reconnect to who you are and why you're here. And it really does do that, and it does it in a beautiful way. You're an intuitive guide and lifelong seeker. Welcome to the club, sister. Robyn is passionate about making spirituality feel accessible, relatable, and actually doable in real life, which is what Fear Unzipped is all about. Her work is rooted in the belief that we all have the ability to connect with something greater and create lives that feel aligned, expansive, and deeply fulfilling. And you are doing it, my dear. You really are, with your gorgeous partner in Seeking Center, Karen. What a beautiful soul she is. I had the pleasure of meeting her the other day. So Robyn, welcome. And at this point, I would like you to kind of share your origin story and let people know what was before, when you were young, what was before all of this came into your fruition, before you worked with Oprah. I mean, when you were really young.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. It is such an honor to be connected with you, Sandi, and to be on Fear Unzipped and be able to share this time and this space with you. And, when I think back to the younger me in this lifetime, I realize how that narrative of this lifetime started and why so many things happened in order for me to be sitting here talking to you and hopefully talking to other people that for whatever reason need to hear this episode, And so for me, one of the major parts of my childhood was losing my father at a young age. So I lost my dad when I was 12, and it happened suddenly. And I didn't have a very religious background. I was raised both being Jewish and Italian, more from a cultural perspective. And my parents did send me to the different types of religious schools and classes. When I was younger, they actually had me go to both. And I remember coming home one day, and I think I was around 10, and I said, I don't know that I believe in religion, institutionalized religion. I think I used different words as a kid. But I said, I believe in being a good person. And I said, I believe in something bigger, but I don't know that I believe in all of these rules. And I said, but what I hear from both is that they want me to be a good person. And so I don't really want to go to these anymore. And they were okay with it. But I say all that because when I lost my dad, I didn't actually know where he went. I didn't know, there was a concept of heaven for sure in my world, but it was very black and white. And so it's not like I thought that I could continue to have a relationship with him on the other side. And I very much had to grow up overnight. And it was my sister, my mom, and I together. We had originally lived in New York, but right before my dad passed away, we had moved to Chicago. And I loved it. I lived in a suburb of Chicago. And so coming from living in Brooklyn, New York, it was very city. And I appreciate having that in my life and in that background. And I still have family that lives in Brooklyn. But when I moved to the suburbs of Chicago, it was freeing. I was able to run around and I felt the sense of real freedom. And so my mom actually ended up keeping us in Chicago. She was able to do that. And my uncle, who's my dad's brother, lived in Chicago, and he ended up, and still to this day, is very much my other father, and I consider him my father in this, on the earthly plane in this lifetime. He's very connected to my dad as well on the other side. But I say all that because it's a part of who I am. And I now know why all those things had to happen when I was a child for me to be doing what I'm doing. And that being said, with all that happening, Oprah became a big mainstay in my life because she was an anchor for my mom and my sister and I on a daily basis. We would talk about what she was talking about on the show. And being from Chicago, listen, I know Oprah was in most people's homes that were of my age and older growing up. But especially in Chicago, because she taped here, it was she was in our vernacular all the time. And so we would talk about what she was doing. And I started having these dreams, very lucid dreams when I was in high school of working for her. And at the time, there was no such thing as the internet. What I thought was, I'm going to go work for the show. I'm going to learn production. And so that's what I did. I ended up going to the University of Wisconsin-Madison and studying radio, TV, and film. And eventually, first then went to go work for Nickelodeon and Noggin, because I tried getting a job with the Oprah show right out of school and there wasn't anything. I ended up going to New York, helping to start a network called Noggin, which was partnership between Nickelodeon and PBS. And it was the first on-air online network, cable network. And I came from the production and the broadcast production part of things, but I was very quickly learning digital because that was when it was all coming to be. This is 1998. And in 1999, Oprah was looking for people to start Oprah.com. And when I saw that she was looking for people who had both digital and TV experience, and I was able to get that job. And no one really knew at that time what the internet would end up being. But really quickly, within a year, we went from being this small team, this marketing arm of the team, to actually becoming a business. And I feel like I was meant to be, it was like the right place, right time to not only learn really all and be a part of this digital frontier and how to tell stories and how to utilize it. I was able to really hone things from a content perspective and understand the business side of things. But I was able to really work with everyone that came through the doors of the Oprah show. And then we were at the same time, that's when the Oprah magazine launched. And all her different aspects all had to be housed within Oprah.com. So I got to work with everybody within the Oprah world, but also the people that were coming through the show. We would do a lot of extra content with these people and then certain key people over and over. So I got to work with all these spiritual teachers and thought leaders and build programming with them, which it all felt like such a gift, not just personally, but I felt like I was able to be a part of giving back in terms of helping to teach and amplify these voices that were really helping all of us better understand who we are and how we can both align with why we're here in this lifetime, but also understand each other. And so I did that for about 20 years.
That's just such a great story. And coming into the internet just at its birth, at its very beginning. And I do remember, because I was working in an animation, or I was a publicist for an animation company at the time. And I remember them talking about online. It was very confusing to me. Or the World Wide Web. I'll never forget that. Or even a CD, like putting information on a CD.
Totally.
I'll never forget that first day with them. I'm going, what is this? This can't be. And then overnight, that took off. And certainly with Oprah.com, that was the center of everything going on with Oprah's immense volume of information that she was putting out there. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe some fearful moments that happened?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I was thinking about this podcast that today and fear and where did that come up for me, and continues obviously to come up for me in different ways. I think when you're doing something that's never been done before, there is so much fear in terms of, number one, how do we do this, right? And then how is it going to be perceived? Like all of that. And so for me, it was very much in the beginning, it was trying to understand really from like a technology perspective, what is possible and how, and for me, it was working with all aspects of a digital team, which at the time was working with a lot of developers who have a different way of thinking. It's a little bit more linear and logical, which we need. And then you have some of our other members of our team that are thinking really out of the box and can we do this, and that? And I think that the biggest challenge at the very beginning was helping bridge the producers of the show and the digital team, because when you are coming, and you probably understand this too, being in that world at that time, I understood what it took to edit a piece and get it up on air. What I needed to translate for people was that it was very different to actually edit a piece of content and get that online. And we're talking even before we could put video on the web, just even updating a show description, right? Or putting resources within a show description. This sounds crazy because now we can do it and it's instantaneous that it can be changed. But we had a team of, I don't even know how many HTML coders. This is even before content management systems. We had to come up with our own system of how do you actually make a change on the web? And most people, which I totally understand, would think you would, just like in Microsoft Word, you would go and like make a change, save it, and then it would just go. It really didn't work that way in the beginning back in 2000, 2001. That's just not how. You could take an hour or more to make like one little change. And that would infuriate so many people because of the high profile nature of what we were doing at Oprah. If we had spelled a name wrong, or if we had a URL wrong, that was really impactful to somebody's business. And so the stakes were very high on a daily basis. There was one time, I wish I could remember what the instance was. We saw that something was wrong that was posted, and it was actually on the crawl of CNN at the time. Like there was something crazy. Like it got to that level because Oprah became such an authority, and we were representative of that it, like, on a daily basis, the stakes were very high. And because we were 24/7, not just making sure that we had things spelled right and the URLs were right, we had to make sure that everything was always working. And there were times, like for instance, when we would do Oprah's favorite things, that inevitably in the beginning, especially when we had Oprah.com and we could list all of the different ways you could get those products, the site would crash. And there was a time that stands out for me, and I think most of the people that were working there at the time. We did the first webcast with Eckhart Tolle and his book, A New Earth, in 2008. And we had 600,000 people at the time coming in at the same time. And at that point, the internet, no one had done that before. There was not even a live sports event that had tried that. And we were the first to do it, and we crashed. And that was that we thought we had done everything we could to make sure that wouldn't happen, and it still happened. Like, which makes me also happy that there are that many people that were interested in like wanting to change their lives and understand what it means to be in the present moment. But that was, those were those times. And then it was like, what do you do? How do you handle those situations? And so you really have to learn to get deep with yourself and have a tough skin. And then figure out in the long run, I didn't even understand that I was actually bottling a lot of that up. Like it came to a point where I had to be able to figure out letting that out because I was living in that kind of fight or flight all the time.
Robyn, while you were telling that story about the site crashing, I felt it because I've been not with that exact situation, but I felt it with other situations that I worked in.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure you do.
I did. I had a story. Oh my God, that came out about Johnny Carson. And I'm not going to go into the details about it, but it was with the LA Times. And it was a great story. But the artwork that they put with it was exactly what Johnny did not want. And I saw the artwork before it came out and I went, oh my God, oh my God. I just thought my life was over. I just destroyed the life of an icon. I mean, is that that's what goes through your mind.
Yes.
Fortunately, Johnny he was great and he was so cool with it. But, and I'm dating myself because there's some people here that don't even know who Johnny Carson is, probably. But he's the father of television.
Yes, he sure is.
And he paved the way for people like Oprah and whatever.
Yes, he did.
But I remember that holy terror. And so you probably were in that a lot daily because one, you were traversing a brand new thing out there, completely unknown. How did your nervous system over time handle it? And did you have actually reactions to that you found that you weren't well or it's just...
Yeah, no, I love that you're bringing it up. Yeah.
Anxiety. And because so many of us live in anxiety, fear, depression. It's not really ours. We've talked about that. But I'm curious, living that fast pace, you're working for Oprah, the pinnacle at that time.
Yeah.
I want to know how.
Yeah. And actually, it brings up two things for me. One is what I realized and why I was able to handle so much of that on a daily basis was because going back to my father passing away when I was 12 of a sudden heart attack, I actually from that experience, I had to learn that nothing is promised and that you have to know how to deal with the unexpected. And so and I think right after he passed away, I lived in such fear because he was very much my security. And when thank God, I was scared to sleep in my house, which is really where my uncle for a period of time, he needed to sleep on our couch because I just was so scared. And over time, I learned how to cope with that. And I learned, how to survive. But also I very much to this day live in this mindset of anything can happen and how do you handle that? So I bring that back to how did I cope with that on a daily basis, and did it end up seeping in? And I would say the way that it seeped in for me was I wasn't always able to sleep well. I think it really impacted my sleep. My nervous system, I was always going. And I then actually, it relates to me having my daughter, because I think then once she was born, it became even more amplified. This like not sleeping, always anticipating, how do I get this all done? Like that was my nervous system working it was an overdrive. And I was able to do and function relatively well for a long time until I couldn't. Do you know what I mean? I think everyone has those points where you just go, I can't do this it's like, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Oh my God, it hit me the same way. It was like a ton of bricks, and then a light switch just went off, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I loved what I did. And I had, my own PR firm, but the stress that I was under.
Correct. The stress was it. Yes.
It wasn't, we'd go on vacation, but I was always on a phone. And when they didn't have cell phones, I'm inside on a landline waiting for the calls. Well, you know this really well.
But I get it. Yes.
And there's a point where you have to listen to your body. So you listen to your body. Let's hear about that.
Yeah. So what happened for me is, and I think probably for you as well, is that I had to make a choice. Right. And so I realized, literally, I came home one day and I said, I can't do this anymore, because I couldn't function for me, it was really the combination of that high stress, high level job and being a new mom. And I think for every person, you have a different sense of what feels fulfilling to you. And there's no judgment on what you choose. For me, it took me a really long time to have my daughter. And then when I went back to work, I was working 100-hour weeks and still trying to be the mom that I wanted to be, but I couldn't. I really couldn't do that from just a time perspective. I didn't have enough time in the day. And when I would come home, I wanted to at least be present with her. But then I was getting phone calls all the time. And so I actually made a choice. I made a choice really within a day. I looked at my husband and I said, I can't do this anymore. I want to be present enough. I really wanted to work, but I wanted to have more of a manageable, and that job was not a manageable job for someone with a new child if you wanted to be super present. There are many people who are able to do it with the right help. But I really wanted to be there for some of those moments. I didn't have to be for all of them, but I wanted to be there for a good amount. So my point is that I went in the next day and I said, I quit. And I knew I would be okay. I knew I'd figured it out. I don't know why I thought that and knew that, but I did. I had this knowing that it would work out. Even if it didn't work out there, I would get another, I'd figure it out. But I knew I couldn't do it for myself or from what I wanted as a relationship with my daughter. And it happened to be at the right time because there was a lot going on in terms of what we were doing before we became the Oprah Winfrey Network. So this is like right before then. And I had a lot of institutional knowledge because I helped launch it, and they kind of needed it. And so they're like, wait, let's figure something out here. Maybe there's a way for you to work part-time, which was really unheard of there at that time. Because when you have a lot of women, especially working together, it's hard to like, how do you make that policy? And so I understood that. That's why I went in knowing like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. It's not going to be here. But actually it just happened to be the right time because they just needed that. And I was also okay. And this is something for people to listen to as well. Because I had worked with Eckhart Tolle, I have to say he was so life-changing for me. I stepped away from that ego self of like, I need this title, I need this money, I need to be looked at in this way. And I really had let that go over about a year's time, maybe a little over that, shedding what it meant to like be whatever title, SVP, VP, whatever. I really didn't care because I know what I can bring to the table. And I don't care what you call me. I really don't. And I really was able to, I felt like the money would come. So like, I definitely wasn't like, I couldn't just never work again. But I knew that if I had to take a pay cut, no matter what, I'd be okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think the knowing of all that helped me, and maybe energetically. So when I walked in there and they were like, well, could you work part-time? I was like, well, part-time at that moment was 40 hours a week, maybe not 100.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no such thing as part-time.
There isn't.
Explanation like that.
There isn't. But I was able to say, I will come into the office these days a week. I will do, and then these other 2 days a week, I really need you to understand that I'm not going to pick the phone up. Like I was just able to have boundaries. That's the other word that I would use, is boundaries are so important. Yes. And that changed my life. It did change my life.
So I had something similar. I'm listening to your story. I'm going, wow, we have so many similarities. I had just had my son. So I have a daughter and I had my son. And this company wanted me to be their publicist, a very well-known animation company. And I said, well, I can't. I have 2 children. There's no way. And they said, we will do anything. So if you can come in, this is before you worked at home, from home or anything.
Right. Yes. That's a great point. You have to point that out. Yes.
So this is new way of doing business. You can come in the days you choose. You can leave when you want to leave. You can. Wow. And it made it absolutely possible because I loved working. I just loved what I did. And, look at those companies, how they were forward thinking.
Yes, very much.
And now that's just, work from home, sure, whatever.
No, but you're right.
Yes. And the other thing about it is when I did make my major switch and I left my PR firm, I just kind of closed it. I did go through an identity thing because my identity was, I was known for being a publicist. I was known for having a PR firm, and I was known kind of, in lots of places. All of a sudden, I'm not doing that. And I have to tell you, my identity kind of crashed.
Yeah.
And it was a choice I made, and that was my big fear. And I know there's so many people listening right now that are in that position where they know they're in a job that just it's done.
Yes.
And you're going to see it more and more now because we're all becoming more our authentic selves. But losing that identity. So let's talk about identity.
Yes.
What is identity?
It brings up, I am so glad you're bringing that up because fast forward a few more years. I did part-time. I ended up, as my daughter grew, I was able to go back full-time. We were now in the Oprah Winfrey Network stage of things. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as crazy as it had been during the Oprah show. There was a difference because we weren't taping a live show with a live audience, I should say, 3 times a day. So it was a very different. So it was much more manageable as a full-time person. I could have more of a life. My daughter was older at that point anyway. but it still got to the point that you're talking about where I knew it was time for me to move on. And that to me is really what ended up leading to Seeking Center. But I reached a point where I didn't know what to do. And I was scared of making a real change. So this idea of fear and identity, and I'll get to that in a second, because for me, I sat with it for about a year and silently. I knew I didn't even want to get up anymore to go to meetings. My soul knew it, and my body then knew it, but I didn't have a plan. And if you're someone, it sounds like you're very similar, like I just couldn't just quit without a plan. And the only other time I had done it had worked out, right? But I should have trusted that, and I didn't. I was much more practical in my thinking at the time. And what ended up happening is I was like, I'm going to turn to my spiritual practitioners and knowings. Like, maybe I'll get guidance that way, because I knew I had to make a change. And it was actually through a series of spiritual synchronicities that led me to have the courage to leave and to really then go on this other path, because I wanted to help other people who are at a crossroads figure out that path forward. And that's what these spiritual experiences did for me. But going then to identity, when I was brave enough to speak up and say that, I felt like it was time to go. And there was a lot of other things going on at the company. So it kind of aligned in that way, so that I left. But when I left, I didn't know who I was. And I actually didn't anticipate that, Sandi. Like, I didn't anticipate having such an identity crisis.
I hear you. I know. That's the thing. When I kind of shut the doors, because I knew I was done. And then what am I going to do? I work out a lot, I do whatever, and my days could be filled, but my brain wasn't working in the way that I felt like I had a lot of knowledge. And so then I created a conference, and then
yes.
Right. I dipped my toe in, thinking that was really exciting because it helped me so much and it helped other people. But what's important about your story is that you got spiritual guidance, but you listened. Because we're getting spiritual guidance, but we don't listen.
That's so true.
So
you're right.
Tell me why you listened and why you trusted in that.
That's a really good question. For me, I can tell you, what ended up happening is I was at that really low place. I didn't know what to do. I made an appointment with a spiritual medium that I trusted. I had been to her before. She was a friend, but we are very good friends now. We were just friends at the time. So she didn't really know the extent of what I was feeling. She really had no clue. And it just so happened, and I can remember the date, it was April 25th of 2018 that I had that appointment. And that same week, I was at a party where our friend of ours surprised us with having a psychic there. And we all had time with the psychic, and she only knew our first name. And you could go in and you could ask about anything. And she would say, like, if you want, though, why don't we concentrate on one aspect of your life? And I concentrated on career. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, you're doing something that's been really successful, but you're going to do something that's completely in line with why you're here in this lifetime, but it's not going to happen overnight. Okay. And she said, so this is 2018. And she said, this is going to happen after 2020. And I see programming and books and lots of different people. She said all this stuff, okay, within 15 minutes. And I left there excited, but like, okay, let's see. Well, then I go to this spiritual medium on April 25th, and she says the same thing. Yeah. And I had not said one word. She just said, what are you working on? I said, well, that's why I'm here. I'm here for you to help me figure this out. And all of it same words, same timing. And then she was actually able to give me even more specificity. And then she said, and by the way, you're an intuitive and a spiritual medium, and you need to do something with that. Promise me you will look into it. Just take a class, do something. And something woke, I call them unlockings. It unlocked something for me. I left that and I felt open and excited where I hadn't been in so long. And within 2 weeks, I ended up meeting a shaman, an astrologer, and then I started having and then within like 6 weeks, I had all these sessions, which I didn't plan on. They really came out of nowhere. And everybody told me the same thing. And none of them knew each other. And the only one who knew me prior was this spiritual medium. And when that happens, you listen. And that was really what gave me the courage. Then I went and did that class, which was my first class in mediumship. And all of it together gave me the courage. So that was April. And by August, I spoke up and I really said, listen, if you're making transitions within the company, please count me out. Like, group me with some layoffs if there's some layoffs, like whatever it is, like, and they did. I was very fortunate. And I know some people are like, what? But I was really fortunate because then by 2019, I was working on Seeking Center, which the goal was to help others have that experience if they were at a crossroads, because that validation is everything. And then once you're a seeker, you're always a seeker. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I've been a seeker since the moment I came out of the womb.
You were, and I didn't even know. Honestly, for me, I didn't know that, I didn't have the awareness that my dad was coming to me in my dreams. Like, I didn't realize that was like actually a thing. And now I know it is. Or that he was sending me signs, or that I could actually tap in and then really have conversations, not just with him, but with my own spirit and with nature and all of it. And that's what now I love, that we are together, like we've come together, and that we can talk about this. That's huge.
And we're talking about it from a very grounded place, that we're not out there. We're just not floating around out there. Yeah. And that's what's important, because it is a part of everybody's life, the most professional person or, whatever. It's a part of your life. I want to know more about your dad, because once you realized that you could tap into him, how has your dad been helping you?
Yes, I love that. Well, first of all, I'm able to really talk to him on a daily basis now. And he sends me like whispers and messages through my own way of translating it. But he shows me signs. Like, he really shows me signs through people. So one of our signs is 11/17, which is his birthday. And that's actually how I knew my Karen, who's my business partner, was going to be my business partner. We met, we were working on this project for a really long time. That was for Oprah. That project didn't go through, but afterwards we started talking, and she told me how she came to her job at Discovery. I told her what I was thinking of doing when I left Oprah. And she sent me this presentation that she had used to get her job at Discovery. And when I went to go save it on my computer, the name of the file was my presentation _1117. And I knew at that moment, like, because of all, I called her and I was crying, because I felt, I could also feel my dad being like, I told you, like, I'm going to always tell you. And she just had sent some rant. She didn't even know, But my point is saying that was such a validation. And then a lot of people that I meet in my life, that they're either born on that day, or that number means something to them. And then there's other ways that he shows me, like, his name is Bob or Robert, and I'll be out and about. And whenever, like, I come across somebody that's actually, like, I can be at a restaurant and the server's name is Bob. And I'm like, oh, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, right? Or there's a license plate that says that. There's other numbers that we have and a couple other signs, but he literally speaks to me every day. And now my whole family's always speaking to him. There's songs that come through that I know are from it. And so to me, it's through the signs throughout my day. And then the whispers, and then he like shows up in so many of the intuitive readings that I have. And especially like with the people that I work with who are also now familiar with him. They're like, I'll be in an actual business meeting, and if there's someone who happens to be an intuitive in it, they'll say, your dad wants you to know he's with us. He's making this happen. So it's like, it's just so funny that he will show himself, and he's very much a part of this. And I now know that had he not passed when I was 12, I would not be doing this. Like, I wouldn't have been as open or curious. And I think there was a bigger reason for all of it. And, I don't know how much you've talked about some like past life regression or different states of that. I know that we've had so many lifetimes together, and we're here to help each other. I mean, he and I think throughout our lifetimes, help each other learn bigger themes in life, right? Like how to deal with abandonment and how to really love ourselves, and how to then also teach and help others love themselves. And I think that there are those kind of broader themes, and certainly handling fear in all of that is part of the healing.
Yeah, there's fear in all of it. And we don't know when these tragedies happen in our lives, they are devastating. You think it's over, life is over. And then if you can look back, I mean, if you look at the trajectory of your life now and you look back, you say, oh, that happened. This was all part of the plan, because it is all part of the plan.
Yes, it is.
And I had on, oh my gosh, Rachel Stewart with 411 Together, who lost their daughter, Kennedy. I think she was 10, of a brain tumor. Well, there's nothing, I think, more devastating than that. What's happened is that Kennedy, and I have had communication with Kennedy. Kennedy is so awesome.
Wow.
Such a bright, bright, bright light, and has brought this community together where now there are millions of people sharing their stories about their loved ones that have passed. This community of comfort, hope, caring, knowing that they're still with us, even though it's just a different dial, a different frequency.
Yes, that's right.
We're on AM, they're on FM. We just have to find the frequency. But Kennedy's passing and not being physically on this planet has changed millions and millions and millions of people's lives.
Wow, I love that.
And Rachel and her husband had no idea that this was going to happen. So I think it's important that we all look at when things that are really tragic happen, or something is like you lose a job or you lose a relationship or there is something grander and greater later on, but you can't see it because you're in the fog of fear.
And you need to be, right? Like that's the human experience. Like you have to like grieve whatever it is, whether it's a relationship or a person, and you allow that for yourself. But to your point, somewhere in there, you will one day, it may be years, but one day you're gonna understand it. One day you will. And it is, as you said, it's very hard in the moment to think about that. But now I really do. I know I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't. Yeah. And I know I'm stronger for it, but I am fulfilled. I understand it. I'm so grateful.
And I think you're more authentic. And I say that, Robyn, because you're living your true soul's purpose right now. And I know that when both my parents passed away 4 months apart, it was just like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And that was just really hard for me because they were such beautiful people. And somebody said, now you're an orphan. I went, what? I didn't understand. Also, be careful what you say to people who are grieving. It's really important to be sensitive to that.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
What happened was then I had to learn about neuroscience. I had to learn how my brain works because I was so sad. Then the metaphysics, all the intuitive stuff came in that I had been kind of burying and not telling anybody. So now I can say I am the most authentic, probably the most grounded I've ever been in my life. Mm-hmm. And I'm completely honest with, in my podcast, and this is not a show. This is just who I am.
Well, you can feel it. You can feel that. You really, it comes through.
And that's true with you too, Robyn. And that's beautiful because we're all trying to get that age-old question, who am I? I don't know who the hell I am.
I don't either. And I think it changes. I think it's going to change until I leave this planet, honestly.
But you do know that you are a soul that is loving.
That's right.
You have
That's
integrity.
Right. That's
you
right.
have pure intention.
That's right. Yes.
You're there to serve the community, which in turn serves you. You know, I'm one reason I'm doing this is it's selfish. It's for me. I want to learn from you. I want to get healed from you.
Iceberg. You're so right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's this beautiful, beautiful, this gorgeous bubble, you know, that you are creating, which makes me want us to talk about Seeking Center and what it is and how it came to be and how massively huge it is.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. You know, it goes back to number one, listening to the whispers and allowing, when you are even in those darkest times, allowing something else to come in. And I really think, you know, had I not gotten to that point of, what do? I can't do this anymore. And being open, I think, you know, I know part of why we're doing what we're doing is so that people don't get to that point and they can start to see it sooner. And I do hope that is really my hope. But I do know that when I got to that point, I was really just open and I was gifted with these experiences that helped me map out a plan. And I think that so many of us get to that point of like, I just don't know what to do. I don't know who I am, all of it. But, you know, when people would say, it was really the number one question for Oprah.com was, what is my purpose? You know, no, I get it. Like, there was a period of time where I was like, I don't know my purpose. You know, I think so many people struggle with that. And so Seeking Center it was born out of originally, Karen and I always had this big plan because we both come from these media backgrounds of how do we, and everything that we ever did, sorry, let me just make sure there's nothing on, everything we ever did was educate, entertain, and inspire. And our goal was to first was going to be a cable network. And it's really unbelievable how, you know, if that's 2018 and here we are in 2026, how things have changed, right? Like that is no longer, but really the first 2 years of our work was really, we thought at first we would do a show and then that would lead to, we had this much bigger vision. We always had it of a network, a community, and then a way in which people could take all of their experiences and put them together so that they too would have a plan. And not only would they have a plan, but they'd have a way in which to utilize all this information about themselves on a daily basis, infused with inspiration that would come from the forecast, let's say, from an astrological perspective or tarot, their own signs in their own lives, but also learning from different experts and teachers. And so we had devised a whole plan to do that with just people, but now technology is around and it can help. So what we started out doing in 2019 was meeting a different practitioner or teacher every single week and vetting them. And they wouldn't necessarily know that we had any bigger plan. We just wanted to start to vet people of all modalities so that we could create a database of people we felt really comfortable recommending. And so that's really how it started. And we knew we wanted to give people who are at a crossroads an experience that would then help them transform their lives. So when we say crossroads, you could, as you said, lose a job, You might lose an important person in your life. You may just feel lost. You may be going through a divorce. There are so many different ways we get to that point and don't know what to do. And through my own intuitive work, I knew that one of the things I'm able to do is help and talk to somebody and figure out maybe what the first experience that they should have to start to uncover who they are or why they're here, and some healing. And that's really how it started. I started working with people and helping them when they were at this crossroads and pairing them with different experiences and holding their hands as they put together a new plan for their lives. And that's a whole show concept that we now do in different ways. But then we're having so many conversations where we need to do something, and COVID hit. And so we just started to do a podcast. And so that started in 2020. And so now we're now 6 years later. We have our podcast. We're in the midst of producing another original podcast, and we're going to be putting together a whole network of podcasts under this genre of seeking and also bridging science and spirituality, which you do so beautifully. And so we're creating the Seeking Center Podcast Network. And then we have created a community. And in this community, we do live events every single week where we are pairing people with different spiritual teachers and modalities so that they can actually experience these things for themselves and then decide if it's something that they want to dive into further, as well as find each other and really share what's going on in their own worlds. And then we are also in the creation of utilizing technology so that we can serve things up to people in a way that they can utilize all of this information about themselves on a daily basis and also be exposed to different content. So that can be used for inspiration, but also for learning. So whether it's a podcast episode on something that we feel like may really help you, or it's an event or a course or something like that you want to explore further, that's what we're working on. So we're in the midst of all of that right now.
Okay, so my head's exploding because I'm thinking about doing it, physically doing it and creating what you're doing. It's massive. It's like starting the Oprah online network.
It is.
But fortunately and fortunately, you do have more tools for you now. And you can cut and paste. It
is very different. I mean, that's the thing. When we first originally came up with this idea, it was going to take such manpower, really. Yeah. I mean, we were like, we need thousands of intuitive guides, and it's not to say that we don't want them, but it's like, and people to build it and money it's just such a different, just giving it a few years has changed.
It's so different. And I can feel it. I can feel you growing this beautiful community. And I go into Seeking Center once in a while and play around. And what I really love is when you have a guest on, let's say maybe they're talking about oracle cards or something.
Yes.
People can ask questions.
Yes.
And the person will answer. And it's really, and I saw a conversation yesterday asking about grounding shoes. Well, I wear grounding shoes, so I could have answered. I should have said something, but are they any good? Do they work? I have grounding. Yeah, I use grounding shoes because I hike a lot. So many of us that don't have a community, that might not have friends that we can talk to about these things. But when you're in Seeking Center, you have a built-in community.
You do.
And these people, I know that there are people in there that become super close friends.
They have. They
probably even travel together or meet together.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're bringing in community at a time when community is really getting lost because we're doing likes and we're commenting.
That's right.
So you're doing a huge service.
Thank you.
Huge service for the world.
Thank you.
And I love it. I love it. And how was Seeking Center, did that name just come to you or?
It did. It's one of, and you know how that works because I know you got this whole idea for this podcast. on a hike. And for me, it was like in the shower. For me, like that's where my best ideas come in the shower. And it did. It just like, it came to me in like 1 second. And I'm like, and then I remember I thought it, and then I said it to Karen, and she's like, I love that. And then we happened to be working with somebody at the time who was helping us with creating all of our design. And he came from a healing journey of his own with cancer. And so his heart and passion, and he was able to bring it to life in in a way that we couldn't even imagine. But we love the idea of Seeking Center because it speaks to both you seeking your own center and creating also a space that is a seeking center. And at some point, there will probably be like actual physical places for it and so forth. But we're just, every single person, whether you are a teacher or a thought leader or someone who is at the beginning of their seeking journey, we are all, sometimes we're guides, and sometimes we are the people who are learning, right? And so that is what we find within the Seeking Center. When we do our live events on a weekly basis, I love that there may be a guide that is teaching that day. And then I see both new seekers as well as guides that have been in this for a while, but we're all the same. We're all souls at the same. We're just trying to understand why we're here together.
We're trying to understand why we're here, and what I believe we're here for is love. And
Yes.
I had Thomas Campbell on, who is he's a physicist who studies consciousness. It's something like a little simple thing like studying consciousness. And he said it comes down to, we are here, we're in a learning lab, we're here to learn love. And I do believe that's true, and we need it now more than ever. And so you are really, really serving the world in such a beautiful way. And just being in the presence of you and Karen, seriously, Robyn, that energy is really important. There's no ego involved. There is a heartfelt wrap your arms around people, because both of you have been through it all.
Yeah.
You know this
Yes,
stuff.
we do.
Nobody here is fully cooked and goes, I got it. I get it.
Oh my good. I mean, I've learned so much from you and on your journey and all that you're doing and that all the people you're talking to. And that is the point, right? Like we're all here. And when you see the light in someone else, we just get brighter. Right. And so that is the point. And that's what one of the things I feel I've learned on my journey is that we can all help. You can always light someone else's candle. We have that within us. And so, the hope in this conversation and all your conversations that you're having is that you are helping people better understand how to cope with their fear and how to live a more fulfilled life. And that fear is part of life.
Yeah.
It is a message. It is a way for us to, it's a barometer. It really is. And, and one of the things I know you and I have talked about in the past is this whole idea of taking away that fear of death. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think that is another thing that I know I want to help people be less fearful of that. And I think that's part of my journey with my dad too, is that, I was just so lost right after he passed away. I didn't understand what happened. And that led to my own, like, what happens when we die? And now I feel like personally, I have a better answer. And I don't know exactly, but I know that we don't ever really die. We just change form. That's my opinion. And I hope that helps other people, with and that there are ways to communicate.
And energy doesn't die. And when you learn how to communicate, oh my gosh, life is so much more fun.
Oh my goodness.
And those on the other side are very funny. They have a really funny sense of humor and little winks, little twinkles, and little, like, I'll say, are you kidding me? Like,
I know.
I'll laugh. And it's just a different tune, tuning in a different way. But again, grieving is real. We need to grieve. we need to experience fear too.
We do.
All these
We do.
emotions are every emotion we feel we're so lucky we're human and we get to feel those emotions. It's just staying in it to the point where there's paralysis, then we need to move forward. But
Yes.
if your grieving journey takes you a year and people say you should be over it in 6 months, tell that person to go take a hike, because your grieving journey is whatever it is. Yeah. When you get a little, can you offer some advice for those that might be fearful about trying something new or stepping into the unknown? Is there something, like if you have to do something with Seeking Center and you want to create something new and it's like, oh no, can I really do this? Is there something that you do to get yourself ready for that?
Yes. I would say that what I do when I will say that recently, because there's always going to be different aspects of whatever you do that are new. And when that unknown is like, I've learned to live with it, but it doesn't mean that I don't get really scared. I do. And I recently had a few nights where and it's always affecting my sleep. When I get really nervous about something, I can't sleep. That's how it comes out for me. And so I was having a couple of these really restless nights, and I had to get very clear on what was it that was making me so nervous. And it's because it's a whole aspect for me. In this case, it was an aspect of my business that I'd never really had to do or deal with. And I didn't know what to do. And so once I was able, I got quiet and I just let myself understand what it was. And then when I understood what it was, then I could start to bring in people that could help me better understand how to do it and remind myself that most people don't know what they're doing. And so you have to ask for help. So I think especially when you're in that place of fear, it's okay to be vulnerable and not know. And I'm like the first usually to be like, I don't know. And I think when it came to matters of like business and finance, I felt like I needed to pretend or something that I knew, but I just didn't. And so I needed to start once I started, and this I'm sure is true for most people, once you start actually digging in and understanding whatever it is you don't know, it becomes so much easier because you're like, oh, that's not actually as hard. Or I can bring in someone who has more expertise than I do to give me the right advice or truly just help me with it. And so it's being able to ask for help is the biggest thing. And when I look back to all these different times in my life where I didn't know, being able to get real with myself, clear with what it is that I'm so nervous about, and then ask for help. I'm always amazed at how generous people are first of all, with their time. And because if they're just like you're an expert at something, and I'm an expert sometimes, like not everything, but there are aspects that we know more because we've been on the journey. And when you talk to somebody about what they have gotten, are some more of an expert than you are, they're so willing to share. And so don't be nervous to ask that. And then I would also say that on a daily basis, because we all are living in the unknown. I think we never know what we're going to expect on any given day. And I know I mentioned I learned that as a kid, but it's become more and more evident in this time right now for all of us living collectively that like we're living in where it's very tangible that you don't know what the day is going to bring. So for me, really before I get out of bed, anchoring myself into the earth and allowing myself to just be grateful and know that I'm equipped to handle whatever it is, because we came in equipped to handle it. We came in equipped to ask the questions or whatever we need to do. But take the moment. It really only has to be a moment before you get out of bed. And then you can do whatever ritual you normally do. If you don't have one, that's okay too. But just that anchoring is so helpful.
I do that too, Robyn. I do, because some people get out of bed, and I used to do this and go, oh, like that, like thinking about what I had to do that day.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that is a crappy way to start your day, because that's the tone of your entire day.
That's right.
So now, I have this little thing, a ritual thing I do. Takes 2 seconds.
It does. It doesn't have to take long.
No, don't think you have to sit there for 15 minutes.
You don't.
Or whatever.
You don't.
No, it just to ground the space. The other thing that you said that was so important is nobody knows what they're doing. I don't care who they are. None of us know what we're doing, but we're doing it. And so kudos for us. Like Elizabeth Gilbert says, at least you're getting in the ring. At least you're getting on the stage. At least you're getting out there. We're trying.
It's true. It also reminds me of that. Like, if you are someone who doesn't love to do public speaking and you get nervous and someone says like, picture everyone being naked or something in the audience. We all are naked at some point. It's that whole idea. Like nobody knows. It's that same in that same genre, right? Like at the end.
I was saying to somebody the other day, look, as long as you're coming from a pure heart, you can't go wrong.
That's right.
We're going to mess up. But if your intention is really kind, just give it a shot. Just
So
if you want to do something. So oh my gosh, this has really flown by. This has been a incredibly interesting conversation for me. I loved every minute, but I have questions for you that I ask everybody. Can I ask you? Okay.
Yes.
The first, when fear comes creeping in.
Yes.
Like during the day, is there something that you go to, a little practice to like in the middle of the day that kind of settles you?
Yeah. I take a deep breath. That is the first thing I do is take a deep breath. And then I do my little practice where I anchor in to the earth. I also talk to my spirit guides and I put a bubble around myself. And I picture a heart around myself, I'm like in a golden bubble of this heart. And it helps me to calm down. That's what I do. I do it I do it every day. I have to.
I do the breathing every single day. When things get a little tense, that breathing really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because your nervous system.
It's like a deep breath. And for me, I don't necessarily need to do more than one or two, but once I do that and then I picture this golden heart, it helps. It helps.
Because your nervous system is saying, oh, she's not in trouble.
Yeah. I know I'm protected. I'm protected, but we all have a little bit of that fear every day.
Yeah. That's part of life. What's one of the best pieces of advice you've ever received personally or professionally?
I would say you are the energy you bring to the room. So remember that. How you walk in a room, and if you walk in with love and light and positivity, you will be received that way. If you walk in that room sad and so on, and sometimes you can't help it, but just know that you will be met with that. If you walk in fearful, people will feel that. So just remember that you're the energy you bring to the room. You can feel that from others too. And then you can be more empathetic. So like I really think of that. And before I go into any meeting, I think about who am I showing up as? What is my energy? And then I can read other people's energy. Once you start to recognize your own, you can recognize others. And then when you start to feel people who are cold or disconnected or sad, if there's time, you might ask them what's going on. And you'll see if they're open. A lot of times people want to talk. So you are the energy you bring to the room.
Yeah, that is perfect, and it's 1,000% true. What does a successful life look like to you?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. And to me, it is a fulfilled life. It is one where I am proud of whatever I'm doing. It could be taking a walk with my daughter. It could be, or it could be talking to you. It's what is making me feel whole. And to me, I would say a lot of that and the fulfillment is I feel like I just want to make sure as many people as possible know what's available to them in order to heal themselves and get back to who they really are and why they came here. That is, to me, my most successful life.
That's beautiful. And you're certainly doing that.
Thanks.
Okay, complete this sentence. In the past, I was, and now I am.
In the past, I was just doing, and now I am present.
Yeah, perfect. Drop the mic, right?
Thing.
Robyn, I just love this conversation so much. Where can people find you?
The best place to find me and all that we're doing is at theseekingcenter.com. You can get to the community we were talking about. You can get to our podcast. You'll be able to get to all of our future podcasts that fall under the Seeking Center umbrella there. You can also reach out. We do lots of different partnerships and collaborations. So theseekingcenter.com. You can also follow us at The Seeking Center on Instagram.
And we'll put all that in the show notes. And I had the
you.
great privilege of being on your podcast, which I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you. We can't wait to post that one.
Oh, we talked a lot about neuroscience and fear and intuition.
Yes.
Robyn, it's been such a joy. I just love you to pieces. I'm so happy you came into my life, and Karen too. And there'll be many more conversations that we have together. I know that.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for being. Thank you for coming into my life. I am so grateful. And thank you for all this unbelievable and incredible and needed work that you are doing in this lifetime.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Love is Society.
Love you.
Sending so much love. Bye.
Thank you.